Good morning and welcome back to Life Connect. We're in day 4 on this long day in the life of Jesus as recorded in the 4 Gospels. And now Jesus has fed the crowds and he sends his disciples off perhaps around 6 o'clock in the evening. And he himself, it says, dismisses the crowd and goes up onto the mountain to pray. Now we noted on Tuesday some of the things that he may have prayed about. I'm sure he would have taken time to pour out his grief to his father and prayed for John's family and his own family and the loss of John the Baptist. Prayed for the crowd that he'd ministered to as well and individuals perhaps that he had talked to on that day. Prayed for himself perhaps and that old temptation he had faced back right at the beginning of his ministry to avoid the cross, the easy path. Prayed for his disciples. Maybe name them one by one and just prayed for them as they were out there on the boat. And then just simply touching base with his father and enjoying the presence and company of his father. And then it says it in Mark chapter 6 and verse 47. Later that night, now we don't know what time it was, maybe it was 8 or 9 in the evening, but it says this, later that night the boat was in the middle of the lake and he was alone on the land. He saw the disciples strain at the oars because the wind was against them. And it doesn't seem, though, he goes straight out to them. That's what the text seems to tell us. So you can imagine as the hours passed and those disciples are in the boat and they should have been over the other side, maybe about 7:30 we should have got there by then. But now they're still there and it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. They're tired and weary, but still living off the miracle of the day. Jesus used us to feed those people. And people were so grateful. It was one amazing miracle. 10 o'clock in the evening comes. They still haven't got there. They're a little annoyed. 11 o'clock, perhaps a little bit worried. Midnight, 1 o'clock. Maybe now anger has risen in their hearts and the miracle's forgotten. Perhaps even angry at Jesus. He's the one that sent us out here. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock comes. Maybe they're now frightened as their failing strength is they're making no headway across. And it isn't until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, it says this, shortly before dawn, he went out to them walking on the lake. Why doesn't God turn up when we want him to? That's a tough question, but I'm just going to suggest a couple of things. First of all, life is not plain sailing. It says the wind was against them. A journey that should have taken a couple of hours had taken over 10 hours. And sometimes we just simply can't understand why. C.S. Lewis once said that suffering is God's megaphone to a deaf world. Just don't understand sometimes. Secondly, our cries sometimes seem to fall on deaf ears. Jesus does see. He sees the weariness, the doubt, the fear, the strain, the tiredness, the anger, the hurt, the rising panic, the despair, the hopelessness. Reminded of the story in the Old Testament where Abraham's slave girl, his concubine, if you like, Hagar, is out in the desert, ran away, and she meets God. She encounters God. God's angel meets her, angel of the Lord, and she names that place El Roi, or El Roi, the God who sees. As Michael Card's beautiful song puts it, to the outcast on her knees, he's the God who really sees. Jesus sees. Maybe thirdly, it's important to think about the fact that sometimes he allows us to get to the end of ourselves before he turns up. Paul, writing to a group of Christians in Corinth in chapter 1 of his second letter, talks about the pressure they were under. They even despaired of life. But these things happened, he says, that we might rely on God, not on ourselves, on God who raises the dead. God is in the business of forming trust and dependence on himself. I'm sure we've heard it a lot over this last few months or during our time, or COVID time. Was it Nicky Gumbel who said it, or J. John? Sometimes God calms the storm, but sometimes he lets the storm rage around us and calms his children. Sometimes he calms the storm, sometimes he calms his children and lets the storm rage around us. Another reason perhaps why he doesn't turn up when we want him to, he has said he wants us to learn and relearn. I mean, these disciples have been on this lake before in a storm, and Jesus was with them, I guess. They might say he was asleep in the boat. But they're constantly relearning lessons, like we learn lessons. I mean, they had to relearn the lesson of God's provision. He'd fed the 5,000, and a couple of months later, he's feeding 4,000. And what are they worried about when they get into the boat? This is on another occasion. When they get into the boat, they're worried about the fact they've only got one loaf between 12 of them, plus Jesus, maybe a group of ladies as well. We've only got one loaf. Jesus has fed 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said 4,000 with 7 loaves. We don't get it sometimes. Isn't it wonderful that Jesus is patient as he teaches us these lessons? And then it says he turns up and he says, take courage, it's I. Don't be afraid, it's I. It is I am. That's what he's saying. We'll think about that tomorrow, but just think of it just for a moment now. I've been here before, says Jesus. I will be here in the future, and I'm here now. I'm bread for your hunger. I'm water for your thirst. I'm balm for your pain, light for your darkness. I'm the shepherd for your wandering. I'm the way or the direction for your direction and purpose. I'm the truth for your uncertainty and anxiousness. I'm the vine for your connection to me. I'm the doorway for your acceptance. I'm the resurrection and life as you contemplate life and death. It says, come to me, all of you that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Let me end with this story. Fanny Crosby was a lady who wrote over 8,000 hymns. She died when she was 94 years old. Famously, our hymns are, of course, Blessed Assurance, to God be the glory. She didn't have the happiest marriage, and she lost her only child while that child was an infant, from which she wrote that amazing hymn, Safe in the Arms of Jesus. On top of it all, she lived her whole life, or at least from the age of 6 weeks, blind. And she wrote these amazing words. In the context, take courage, it is I, says Jesus. She writes the words, take the world, but give me Jesus. All its joys are but a name, but his love abideth ever, through eternal years the same. Take the world, but give me Jesus, sweetest comfort for my soul. With my Saviour watching o'er me, I can sing though billows roll. Take the world, but give me Jesus. Let me view his constant smile. Then throughout my pilgrim journey, light will cheer me all the while, till with clearer, brighter vision, face to face, my Lord I see. Don't be afraid, says Jesus. Take heart. It is I.